Welcome to Christian Warrior Training. My name is Keith. In this episode, we're going to talk about conflict resolution. Now, look, the church is not immune from people coming in and causing disturbances. Now, if you are not a Christian, but you want to learn how to deal with difficult people, this is the place for you. If you are on a church security team, this is most definitely the place for you. The training that I'm going to give you, it's going to be short. It's going to be simple. I'm going to give you some tools to deal with difficult people. I dealt with difficult people for 30 years as a police officer in the San Francisco Bay Area. You can only imagine in that area the number of difficult people that there are. The same stuff I'm going to teach you is what I taught academy recruits, what I taught my trainees on the road, and it's what I did myself when I was on the street. First off, let's talk about the learning objectives for this course. We're going to understand the core concepts of de-escalation. We'll talk about the critical decision-making model, or a CDM. We'll talk about strategic communication. And then I'm going to give you different communication models to deal with people out on the street or in the church or wherever you may be. De-escalation, we hear a lot about de-escalation. They try to make it sound like it's this new thing. It is not. I first became a police officer in 1989. I used de-escalation my entire career. I was taught it way back in 89. This is nothing new. It's just something people seem to think cops never did before, I guess. It's something that anybody could use, especially if you conceal carry, if you work in a church. It's a skill you need. And basically what de-escalation is, it's a process of using strategies and techniques intended to decrease the intensity of the situation. Now, remember that de-escalation is a two-way street. It takes two people to de-escalate. So I can try and de-escalate a situation, but if the other person doesn't want to de-escalate, it's not going to work. So the things that we do will help them, guide them to de-escalate with us. So there are some common misconceptions about de-escalation. So as an example, if a security member uses force, that means they failed to de-escalate. That is not true. Look, if a security member had to use force on somebody, sometimes that's just unavoidable. Again, it's a two-way street. Sometimes that other person doesn't want to de-escalate. Another misconception is that security members are being required to walk away or to retreat. We're not teaching you to do that either. We're teaching you how to talk smarter and how to use key phrases to help people turn around and basically give them an off-ramp from their current behavior. There's also a misconception that security members are letting their guard down if they de-escalate, and that is definitely not true. It's actually the best cops that I've seen on the street are people that were really good at de-escalation. Another misconception is that de-escalation is too difficult to apply in rapidly changing situations. Look, a guy comes into your church and starts shooting people. No, you're not going to. There's only one way to de-escalate that, and we all know which way that is. But certainly, you have somebody battering another person, I've de-escalated that pretty quickly just with my words. So we're going to teach you how to do that. The benefits of de-escalation is a reduced danger to security members and to your congregation. It also improves congregation cooperation. People see that you're trying to de-escalate this, and it helps get buy-in from them. It also has a positive impact on security member wellness. It is beneficial to them. Now, let's talk about some core concepts. Now, security members should attempt to recognize the congregation's physical and psychological reactions to situations. It's kind of one of the things we like to talk about, atmospherics. Security members should also try to recognize their own physical and psychological reactions to situations. Now, some guy can come up. I'll give you an example. A guy came into one of our campuses last week or 2 weeks ago, and he came in to argue with everybody about scripture in a negative way. He was coming in, talking scripture, and then using it to explain how God is not real in his mind. Certainly that gets a guttural reaction for some of us. And he was being kind of a jerk about it too. He was being very angry about it. And thank God we had a very good security team member who just came over and said, "Hey, we appreciate what you're having to say, but you're just looking for an argument and you won't find it here. So it's time that you left," because there was no talking to him. You weren't going to get anywhere with him. And that worked. He walked out the door and we were all done, and there were no fights, no bad things happening in the church. Tactics and techniques may assist in decreasing the situational intensity of a situation and gain voluntary compliance. So the things that you do are going to help de-escalate the situation. Now, some more core concept is self-control. I have had some very hateful things said at me before about my family, just everything. And I've had to have the self-control to just ignore it and move on. So understanding of physical and psychological reactions of the public and security team members is going to assist you in maintaining self-control. Now, effective communication, clear commands and questions, good observation and listening skills, and appropriate terminology is going to enhance the likelihood of success. Another core concept is scene assessment and management. So when possible, you want to provide security members with an accurate picture of what is occurring and it assists in the management of options. So as an example, we had a lady coming in who thought one of our pastors was possessed by the devil, and she would come in and basically surveil the area and leave. Many people had talked to her, and we got the feel that there was some mental illness going on. So when we finally asked her, hey, we need you to leave and not come back, because she was becoming more dangerous, like you could see it building up within her, we were able to know ahead of time what were her triggers. We knew to keep that pastor away, and we knew to just kind of brush her aside and help her move on out of the building. So that way she didn't cause any problems, and it worked out lovely, and we haven't seen her since then. Now, some more on those core concepts. It includes force options. Now, reasonable use of force techniques can reduce situational intensity for the safety of all parties. If you want to know more about use of force, I have a video on that, another class that you can take. You can head over to courses.christianwarriortraining.com. You can take that course, see the video, get a certificate. And that'll help you better understand some of your options that are out there. But the most important thing to remember with force options, it is almost always best to have law enforcement deal with situations where you might have to go hands-on. Now let's talk about the critical decision-making model. So when forming a plan to address a security event, security members should keep in mind the universal respect for human life and dignity. The components of the critical decision-making process include collecting information, assessing the situation, threats and risks, law and policy, plan, and then act, review, and reassess what you're doing. Let's get into each one of those individually so we better understand. Now, collecting information. Now, the collection of information prior to and during the use of de-escalation and a threat risk assessment may be considered while using de-escalation techniques. So de-escalation techniques that are attempted or actually utilized should be documented in the appropriate reports related to an incident. In de-escalation techniques that can be documented include, but are not limited to, information gathered prior to arriving at the scene, use of distance, use of additional security team members, communication and verbalization techniques that you use, the level of success or failure of each de-escalation technique that you used. Now, look, I gave an example in a prior video about some armed Satanists that showed up at a church in Boise, Idaho. De-escalating them is going to be very difficult. I would not bother. I would actually call the police and let them deal with it. I give you some hints on dealing with that if you have that issue in the future. But certainly what you can do is you can go out there and engage them in conversation and try to help them move on. When you're done, you can go back and write a report about what you did, because you're going to want to document everything in case something does happen later on down the road. And you want to document everything that you did to try to de-escalate that and how they ignored it. It's honestly going to help the police later on when they have to deal with them and they have a use of force with those people. It's going to help the police later on down the road to show that they just wanted nothing to do with it. So another thing we're going to do is assess the situation, the threats, and the risks. So assessing the situation includes, but it's not limited to, determining if the situation poses a threat or a risk to other people. As an example, we have armed Satanists outside of the church. Yeah, that's a huge risk, and that is going to pose a threat to everybody. You want to determine if the threat requires an immediate response. Yes, you have armed people outside of the church. I think I need to go out and deal with that. And you want to determine if there's an imminent threat that requires some kind of action. Well, they're not pointing rifles. They're just acting like buffoons out there. And it's going to be more of a talk to try and get them to move on. But a really common one that you might come across is like a parent that comes up to pick up their child when they don't have custody. And the Sunday school calls the parent that has custody. They come down, and now those two are arguing in the Sunday school area. In a situation like that, you're going to look at the overall. What I like doing in a situation like that is I look and I go, I don't want people arguing in front of kids like that. And it's disrupting the church. So what I always like doing is I like walking up going, hey guys, we're in the church. Why don't we take this outside and talk outside? And then what that does, everybody will almost, I haven't had anybody not comply with this. They kind of go like, yeah, I'm in the church and I'm arguing. This is bad. They come outside, but children stay behind. And so now you've separated them from the children. It gets them outside. It gets time for the police to show up to come deal with who has custody, because that's not going to be you that determines custody. It's going to be the police. And you go outside, and then now you de-escalate it by changing the atmosphere and moving somewhere else. Now, assessing the threats includes, but is not limited to, awareness of the overall situation. Let's go back to the people that were arguing in the Sunday school. Yeah, you've got two grown adults yelling at each other in the Sunday school, right? You want to assess and request appropriate resources. Do I need the entire security team? No, I probably just need 2 people to come deal with it. Do you need cover and concealment? Well, I do worry about somebody shooting me all the time because that's 30 years law enforcement. I have had a lot of bad things happen. So I am constantly looking, like, if something happened, if the husband pulls a gun to shoot mom, to take the kid, is there a place I can seek cover to return fire or what have you, right? And the distance between security members and the subjects. We are going to do a video on contact and cover, which is basically the 2 of you contact a person that concerns you and you form a triangle, and one person does business, one person just covers you. And we'll talk about how to do that later. We have to go outside and video some of that, and we'll show you how that's done. Assessing risks includes, but isn't limited to, what's the subject's behavior? Are they mentally ill, like the lady that thought our pastor was possessed by the devil? Or are they just upset because they feel that they have custody of their child? What's the subject's condition? Are they under the influence of drugs? Are they under the influence of alcohol? Or, do they, again, have some kind of mental illness? What are some communications issues? I had a suspicious person in my church that somebody called out. When I contacted him, he was actually very nice, but he was also on the spectrum significantly. And talking to him, there was a lot of things that were interfering with him. And I could see right away that a lot of the verbal things, touching him, sounds, a lot of stuff was disturbing to him. We worked that out so we can talk to him and have a great conversation. Does the subject have access to weapons? I live and work in a state where we have constitutional carry. Anybody can carry a gun. And we teach a class on how to identify armed people. I'll do an exercise at the front of our building as people come in. No less than 30% of my congregants are armed, because we're in Idaho. People are armed. Is that something that's going to cause a problem for you, right? And then what's the subject's special skills or knowledge? Is there something you should be concerned about that you could use to help communicate? Like, what do you have going on exactly? We also have law and policy. So you also need to consider, is there a legal reason or an obligation to act? As an example, let's go back to that armed satanic church out front. Is there a obligation to act? Well, they're off your property and they are abiding by all laws and they aren't violating a law. It's just somebody you need to monitor. Now, certainly you can go over there and ask them, like, hey, you're disturbing people. Can you please move on? But that's what they want. That's what they're there for. You have to ask yourself, is there a legal reason or an obligation to act? What legal power does a security team member have based on federal, state, and local ordinances? Remember, you're not a police officer. Your job is not law enforcement. And a lot of people forget that sometimes. It's really hard for us that we're in law enforcement that we're not doing that anymore. It's hard to separate that part from ourselves. But you need to keep that in mind. And are the security team member actions within church policy? What is your policy? Do you have policy? If you don't have policy, you might want to come up with one because it's kind of important. You also want to have a plan. So the security team members should identify roles and responsibilities of the people who are going to make contact with this person. As an example, hey, I'm going to contact them. I just need you two to cover me. And that's it. And I'll do all the talking. Are there any contingencies? Hey, if he pulls a gun and starts shooting, then, the three of us are going to engage that, but we need the other security team members to start moving people to safety, right? We don't want everybody to start shooting. We got our designated shooters. And we have other options and resources. Yeah, call 911 and ask for help and get the police there. Some of you, it may take a while because you're out in the middle of nowhere. Some of you may be really quick because you're in a city. And then you also want to utilize time. On SWAT, I was on SWAT for 20 years. One of the things that we had was time, talk, and tactics. It was time, just use your time to draw this out, keep talking to the people, and then use tactics to try and stop it. But time and talk were the top 2 out of those 3. Tactics came in last. Time, you can use time on your side to draw this out to give yourself some space. And then lastly, we want to act, review, and reassess. So de-escalation is dynamic, and security members should implement a plan and prepare to adjust it if you need to. You want to assess whether that action has a desired effect. And if that action has a desired effect, is there anything more that can be done? And then finally, you want to review what lessons can be learned following the conclusion of that contact. It's called a debrief. I love debrief. I get everybody together and say, all right, let's debrief. I've been doing that for decades. And this is not the time for people to get butthurt about their performance or anything else. We are having an open conversation about becoming better. The best teams that I saw were the ones that can do a debrief and nobody gets hurt and they don't take it personally. They just go, yeah, I can do better next time. That's how you become better as a team member. So let's talk about the effect of time on security member planning and tactics. So although rapidly evolving and violent incidents may not allow security members to try and slow things down, using the time when safe and practical to do so may aid in reducing the intensity of that situation. So although there are situations where security members can't delay in acting, many can be handled safely and effectively by allowing more time to transpire. So these strategies and techniques to de-escalate a situation may affect security member safety, situational awareness, and tactical repositioning. Creating distance may calm an irate individual, and it could help reduce the person's intensity. But if doing so poses a loss of situational control or security member or public safety or further jeopardize, then adding distance may be counterproductive to achieving a positive outcome. Now, situational awareness is a critical consideration in de-escalation. Recognizing what may be an immediate threat, seeing people or items causing agitation to a violent suspect, like a wife or a husband that's there, making it worse, or understanding how some stimuli are altering behavior, aid a security member in responding well to an incident. Tactical repositioning is often utilized for security member safety, and it can also be considered a de-escalation technique. So a security member being less or more visible can affect actions of other people. One of the things that I like doing, we practice every once in a while on how to deal with people that are in the congregation yelling at the pastor. Not that we've had that, but what happens if it does? One of the things that we did was that if we've got our rows of seats, what we found was if the person's in the middle yelling, that if we evacuate the row in front, the row behind, and then everybody from that row, and we clear everybody out and they leave, now there's 3 rows and just that single disruptor in the middle. And everybody that we put there ends out calming down, even though they know it's a drill and we've told them, don't calm down, keep getting angry. Everybody calms down because all of a sudden they're exposed. They don't have cover of people anymore. And so removing those people and exposing that person by themselves, it makes it safe for us, because now if we have to go in and deal with that person, we don't have our own people in the way, and it makes it easier for us to go grab them. It's safer for everybody around, but they lose that cover. And every single time we do it, everybody calms down every single time. It works really well. So the vantage points from which security members observe must provide for security of member safety. One of the things that I like doing is being up in the balcony, and I can watch the entire congregation down below. So if something does happen, I can call it out right away. But also, as I'm calling it out, if something happens, they can see that I'm up there, and now they know I'm being watched by this guy up above, and people are coming in. Different positions can also direct someone's attention elsewhere, or draw them away from threats, or help de-escalate that situation overall. Now, gaining useful information prior to arriving at an incident and continuing to update it during the call can assist security members with a better understanding, while possibly providing additional solutions not recognized without that information. So getting that continual update for whoever contacted you about what's occurring really does help you out a lot. So for an example, knowing a despondent person's child recently died would be helpful to a security member trying to assist them. Gathering information on medications or medical issues of that individual. Contacting a family member, but be careful with that one. Sometimes contacting a family member and bringing them in can actually make things worse. So I throw that out, just be careful with that one. Assess whether the action has the desired effect. If the action has a desired effect, is there anything more that can be done? And lastly, review what lessons can be learned following the conclusion of incident by contacting family members for additional information on that individual. When you document these incidents, because you're going to have to document everything that occurs, right? You have to protect the church and protect yourselves and create intelligence for your people. When documenting incidents where de-escalation techniques are utilized, security members should include specific words spoken and suspect actions taken and not taken. The documentation should provide a clear understanding of what the security member was facing, the actions taken, the observations made, and other important facts related to the security members and others' actions. Now, let's talk a little bit about strategic communication, how to handle verbal abuse, deflection, and redirection. People are going to hammer you with some hateful words. Security members may need to deal with persons who are angry, they're upset, or they verbally lash out at you. Instead of responding in kind, because we don't do that, security members may be able to deflect or redirect the conversation in a more positive direction. So this can be done with the use of verbal deflectors. Some verbal deflectors include, I appreciate that, but I understand that, but I got that. However, maybe so, but I hear that. However, all right. So using those deflectors work really well. Those verbal deflectors allow the security member to focus on the issue and not the attitude. So the phrase also acknowledges the other person's concerns. So the key to using verbal deflectors is to deflect the comment, then to immediately add that but or however. So as an example, if somebody goes, "You're an asshole," you can come around and say, "That may be so. However, I need you to leave the church," right? So you're acknowledging, or you can just say, "I hear that. However, I need you to leave the church." Or what I really like doing is just, "I understand what you're saying, but you're in the church swearing. Why don't we take that outside and bring it outside?" And then a lot of people will look at that and go, "Yeah, you're right. I'm in the church. I shouldn't be doing this." And they leave. Or some people are like, "Nope, I had my say and I'm gone." The worst thing you do is go, "I'm an asshole. You're a effing asshole." That's the worst thing you can do. And that's not what Jesus wants us to do. So that's not what we should be doing. All right. So here are some communications models. One is called LEAPS. It's listen, empathize, ask, paraphrase, summarize. So you want to listen to what the other person has to say. You want to empathize with the other person by trying to understand his or her feelings. You want to ask questions to get more information from the other person. Possible questions include asking who, what, when, where, why, and how. You want to paraphrase what you've heard to show the other person that you are listening, that you understand what he or she is saying. So as an example, you can say, "Let me make sure I heard you correctly. You said," and then just repeat back what they said. And then you want to summarize by giving a possible solution to the situation. For an example, you can say, "From what you've said, let's do whatever. Let's leave the church and take this outside." That works every time. You also have a 5-step method. The 5-step method is ask. You have an ethical appeal. "I need you to leave the church." You can set context, a reasonable appeal. Tell them why. "You're being really loud and it's disrupting the congregation and it's giving you some unwanted attention." You want to present options, like your personal appeal. Always present the positive option first. "Hey, why don't we go outside before the police come? So you can stay here and wait for the police, or we can step outside." Well, nobody wants to talk to the police, so they'll go outside. You got the confirmation stage. It's your practical appeal. "Is there anything else I can say to gain your cooperation? I'd like to think you'd work with me." And I did that a lot on the street. I would always ask, "Is there anything I can say or do to convince you that you need to leave right now?" And some people say, "No." "Awesome. You're under arrest." No, just kidding. A lot of times it didn't end up like that. But a lot of people hear that and they know where this is going. And lastly, act. Disengage to wait for further assistance or immediately move to a force option. So let's say our lady is stalking our pastor because she thinks he's possessed by the devil. It's very easy to understand she might use force to remove the devil from the pastor in her mind. So in that instance, I'm giving you a hypothetical. If we ask her to leave and she refuses and the police are coming, then we may want to just disengage and then stand by and wait in case something happens that we can jump on that if we need to, and then just wait till the police show up. Or we can tell her, "Hey, and this really happened to me. All of a sudden the pastor showed up," and try to engage with her. Now, thank goodness nothing bad happened, but you can see her getting amped and amped and amped. And I finally had to tell, this is my de-escalation for this situation. I had to tell the pastor, "I need you to leave right now." And he kind of looked at me funny and I'm like, "No," I said, "Right now, leave." And he left, and then she calmed down. So my de-escalation was getting him out of there. He wanted to pray it out, which I get, and that's appropriate a lot of times, but not for somebody with severe mental illness that's hallucinating that the devil is in him. You have to think, like, what are you going to do? Because certainly I don't want to use force. I want to do everything I can to avoid that. And I've lived my life like that, and it's worked really well. What can I do to avoid force? Doesn't mean I'm not going to use force if I have to. I'm doing everything I can to avoid this, including offending the pastor, saying, "I need you to leave right now. I need you to," and it de-escalated everything. She left right away. Everything was perfect. Okay. That's all I've got for communication, de-escalation. It's really simple. This is what your next steps are. Your next steps are to do role play training with your security team doing these exact incidents. Set up an argument, set up, some mentally ill person coming in, do these different scenarios and then act it out, because what's going to happen is you're going to deal with these situations before they really happen, and you're going to become really good at it. And so if you don't do those exercises beforehand, you're not going to do real well when the real day shows up. So it's best to make those mistakes in the role play. We call it reality-based training. I've written a lot of those articles about reality-based training in Christian Warrior Training. Don't forget to sign up for our newsletter at www.christianwarriortraining.com, and you'll get those updates all the time. So that's all I've got for now. Stay safe. I'll see you next time.